New Hampshire, the Granite State, land of beautiful scenery from rolling hills to the dramatic peaks of the White Mountains, home to the mighty chipmunk and other critters, and one of the most controversial archaeological sites of America. Just a few miles north of the Merrimack River Valley, a major population center for millennia, lies the sleepy town of Salem. Amongst vast stretches of forests atop an area called Mystery Hill, there is a curious sight. America's Stonehenge, as it has come to be known, is a stone structure that reminds some of Stonehenge in the UK. It is a collection of calendar stones, marking important celestial events, and a number of chambers purported to have been used for ceremonial purposes. There are calendar stones aligned with all manner of dates that may be important to an agricultural civilization. Most notably, the winter and summer solstice, as well as various lunar cycles, including one that only occurs once every 18.61 years, indicating that whoever built this place had sophisticated astronomical knowledge. These stones align with astronomical positions when viewed from a central location at the site. While unfortunately the original viewing platforms were destroyed, the spot is now home to a slightly elevated wooden platform which allows for observation of the astronomical alignments. There are two processional paths leading into the site from the north and south. The northern path is associated with the summer calendar stones, the southern one with the winter ones. Could these have connected nearby villages to a sacred site? The southern path, in fact, may have been guarded by a chamber that is today called the Watch House. While we simply don't know what this chamber was used for, it would have provided a good vantage point for spotting unwelcome visitors. Perhaps the most controversial structure at the site is the dramatically named sacrificial table. Grooves on the table seemingly allow for draining and collecting liquids of the table. Perhaps the blood of a sacrifice? How would we even know? A rock carving 70 miles away in Shutesbury, Massachusetts, shows a similarly shaped table with a human lying on it. Could this be an illustration of human sacrifice at Mystery Hill? It is impossible to say. Some merely see a colonial-era cider press or soap-making table. The mysteries of the table do not end here, however. Underneath it lies a so-called speaking tube. This tube leads into what is now called the Oracle Chamber, the biggest chamber on the site. One could theoretically hide in the Oracle Chamber, behind the table, and talk through the speaking tube to the ones near the table without being seen. A perfect way to let the voices of the gods be heard? Does all this fanciful speculation about the purpose of the site hold up? When was this site built? And by whom? What does archaeology have to say? Confusingly, the site was owned and used by colonists who have left several structures behind themselves. This is one reason why this site is so controversial. Some see nothing more here than evidence of colonial occupation. However, the presence of the calendar stones, as well as at least two independent ways to date this site to pre-colonial times, bring this skepticism into question. So how has this site been dated? First of all, a number of artifacts have been excavated from the site that clearly show that this area was used and occupied by Native Americans in pre-colonial times. The artifacts suggest at least semi-sedentary occupation, as they include stone tools and pottery. Some of these have been estimated to be up to 2,000 years old. Charcoal deposits found at the site were carbon dated to almost 4,000 years ago. Rotted pine roots found in some walls suggest a similar date. In addition to these dating methods, the position of the calendar stones offers another clue. Today, these stones no longer precisely line up with the various celestial events, such as the summer and winter solstice. However, the precise position of the sun, moon, and stars on Earth's sky has been changing over the millennia. This is due to the variation in Earth's obliquity, the degree to which the planet's rotational axis tilts relative to its orbital axis. Archaeoastronomy is the field of science that allows us to reconstruct the past position of celestial bodies on the skyline. Indeed, such reconstruction suggests that the calendar stones at America's Stonehenge lined up with their intended targets around 4,000 years ago, which coincides remarkably well with the radiocarbon dates. The most hardcore skeptics of America's Stonehenge would dismiss some of this evidence. A man named William B. Goodwin owned the site in the 1930s, and he firmly believed Irish monks had built it after crossing the Atlantic in pre-colonial times. He supposedly tried to alter the site to fit his narrative, perhaps even placing the calendar stones? Maybe, though it would be difficult to believe that enough was known about archaeoastronomy at the time for him to have successfully faked a 4,000-year date. In other words, how would he have known where to put the stones so that they line up with celestial events, as they had happened 4,000 years prior? It is impossible to dismiss the evidence that this site was occupied as far back as 4,000 years ago. This puts Mystery Hill in a kind of limbo. Almost everyone agrees that the site was used in pre-colonial times for millennia, and that colonists later built some stone structures on it. But precisely how much contribution came from the pre- and post-colonial periods is what is mired in mystery. Now, who would have been the pre-colonial people who could have built such a site? The natural choice would be Native Americans. Indeed, the Merrimack River Valley, near which the site lies, has been an important population center for millennia. Native Americans have been present in what is now New England for more than 10,000 years. And in fact, we have evidence that they adopted agriculture and made pottery starting around 2,500 years ago. The earliest dates of the site go back to 4,000 years ago, certainly a time when Native Americans were present in the region, but a time before pottery and agriculture. Could non-sedentary people have still built a permanent site? Perhaps. In this regard, America's Stonehenge may be similar to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a set of stone structures predating agriculture and pottery by a few millennia. It may have provided a ritual or social gathering place for an otherwise mobile population. The most important counter-argument to the Native American hypothesis is that there is supposedly no evidence that Native Americans in New England built in stone. Indeed, New England Indians did not use stone in the construction of their dwellings. Naturally, it would have made little sense for Native Americans to build their dwellings in stone, as all the way up to the eve of colonization, they lived semi-sedentary lives, where they moved their villages every few years. But there is no reason why they could not have had more permanent structures for social or ritual uses, where stone construction could have been utilized. In fact, New England itself is littered with many unexplained stone structures. The most hardcore skeptics, however, will ascribe all of these to colonists. So there you have it. On the one hand, the timing of the site coincides very well with Native American presence in the region. On the other hand, the nature of the site seems to rule out Native American builders, according to some. Some fringe views try to reconcile this inconsistency between the timing and the nature of the site by appealing to esoteric theories of pre-Columbian visitors from Bronze Age Europe. Such extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The reality is, however, that we don't have any evidence of Bronze Age European presence at the site, no artifacts whatsoever. The only thing such theories can point to is perceived similarities between European and Near Eastern stone structures and America's Stonehenge. So, what can we conclude from our visit to America's Stonehenge? A site that was certainly occupied by Native Americans who have certainly been present in the region for thousands of years, but one which has calendar stones and other stone structures, even though Native Americans supposedly did not build in stone. Further confused by the fact that the site was later owned and used by colonists and a person who wanted to prove his own hypothesis about it. Truth be told, we will likely never solve the mystery of Mystery Hill. But it is interesting to ponder who built this site and when, and what they used it for. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.